My husband left me for my sister, thinking he'd won. But on Christmas Day, our grandmother gathered the family. With a smile, she read her new will, and they were in for a shock. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, grab a warm cup of tea and get comfortable. I'd love to know what time of day you're watching this video. Please comment M for morning, A for afternoon, or E for evening. Now, let me take you into this story. The crystal chandelier above the dining table was glittering so brightly it almost hurt my eyes, but it was nothing compared to the blinding audacity of the couple standing across the room. The air in my grandmother's lakeside estate usually smelled of old books and comforting vanilla, but tonight, it was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the suffocating weight of betrayal. There they were. Kenneth and Cynthia. My ex-husband and my younger sister. They stood by the fireplace, holding crystal flutes of champagne that my grandmother, Josephine, had paid for. Kenneth had his hand resting possessively on the small of Cynthia's back, a gesture he used to use with me for 10 years. But he looked different now. His suit was sharper, his hair styled with a trendy cut that didn't quite suit a man pushing 40, and his smile was a little too wide, a little too manic. He looked like a man who thought he had won the lottery. And in his mind, he had. Cynthia was glowing, draped in an emerald green silk dress that I knew cost more than my entire wardrobe combined. She was laughing loudly at a joke my cousin made, tilting her head back to expose her neck, making sure the diamond necklace Kenneth had bought her caught the light. It was a performance. Everything about them was a performance designed to show the family, and specifically me, that they were the winners. That destroying my life, breaking my heart, and tearing our family apart was justified because look at how happy they were. Look at how successful they looked. I stood by the window, clutching my own glass of water until my knuckles turned white. I was wearing a deep red dress, a color I never used to wear. Old Valery, the Valery from 8 months ago, would have worn beige or gray, trying to blend into the wallpaper. But tonight, I needed armor. They have no shame, do they? Uncle Ray murmured, appearing beside me. He was the only one holding a drink who wasn't smiling. Acting like they own the place already. Let them act, I whispered back, forcing my voice to remain steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The show isn't over yet. Uncle Ray squeezed my shoulder, a silent signal of support, before moving away. I watched as Kenneth guided Cynthia toward the center of the room. He raised his glass, clinking a fork against it to demand attention. The chatter died down. Everyone, if I could just have a moment, Kenneth announced, his voice booming with that salesman confidence that used to charm me and now just made my skin crawl. Cindy and I just wanted to thank Grandma Josephine for hosting this incredible evening. And to let you all know that we have some big plans for the coming year. We're looking at expanding the investment portfolio, and we've actually put an offer on the Harrison estate down the road. A ripple of murmurs went through the room. The Harrison estate was a multi-million-dollar property. Kenneth was beaming, looking directly at me with a smirk that said, "Look at what I can do without you holding me back." He was spending money he didn't have, banking on a future he hadn't earned. He was practically counting the inheritance before the funeral. My grandmother, Josephine, sat in her high-backed velvet armchair near the Christmas tree. To anyone else, she looked like a frail, elegant elderly woman with her silver hair perfectly coiffed and a tartan blanket over her lap. But I knew better. I knew the steel spine beneath the cashmere cardigan. She had been watching Kenneth's speech with eyes that looked like frozen blue glass. Slowly, deliberately, Grandma Josephine placed her teacup on the saucer. The sound was soft, a tiny clink, but in the silence of the room, it sounded like a gavel striking a judge's bench. "Thank you for that update, Kenneth," Grandma said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that instantly silenced the murmurs. "However, since we are discussing the future and assets, I believe this is the appropriate time for my own announcement." She reached down to the side of her chair and picked up a thick, leather-bound folder. Kenneth's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but he quickly recovered, whispering something to Cynthia. They probably thought this was it, the moment she would hand over the keys to the kingdom, stepping down from the family business and letting the dynamic young couple take over. Grandma stood up. She didn't use her cane. She stood tall, her gaze sweeping over the room, over the aunts and cousins who had whispered behind my back, over the neighbors who had judged me, and finally landing on Kenneth and Cynthia. "I have lived a long time," Grandma Josephine began, her voice gaining strength with every word. "I have built this family and this business from the ground up. I have seen seasons of plenty and seasons of drought. But most importantly, I have learned to distinguish between gold and gold-plated brass." The air in the room grew heavy. The smile slid off Cynthia's face. Kenneth shifted his weight, loosening his tie slightly. "This year has been revealing," Grandma continued, opening the folder. The rustle of papers echoed in the dead silence. "It has revealed character. It has revealed loyalty. And it has revealed greed. Therefore, I have made significant changes to my last will and testament, as well as the structure of the family trust, effective immediately." She looked directly at Kenneth, her eyes narrowing. "You seemed very confident about buying the Harrison estate, Daniel. I assume you were planning to use the family collateral to secure that loan? Or perhaps you were counting on the trust fund disbursement scheduled for January?" Kenneth went pale. "Josephine, we were just planning for the family's future, I didn't mean." "Silence," she commanded, not shouting, but with absolute authority. "I am speaking." She looked down at the document in her hand, a small, terrifying smile playing on her lips. "I think you all better sit down. Especially you, Kenneth. And you, Amanda. Because what I am about to read is going to change everything. Before I tell you what happened next, and trust me, you are going to want to hear this, I want to say thank you for being here with me. If you're listening, drop a comment below and tell me what city you're tuning in from. It's amazing to see how far our voices can reach. Now, to understand why this moment was so satisfying, you have to understand how my life completely fell apart 8 months ago. 8 months. That's all it took for my entire world to disintegrate and reshape itself into something unrecognizable. Before that Tuesday afternoon, I thought I was living the American dream. Or at least, a comfortable, middle-class version of it. I was sitting at my kitchen table, a stack of essays on the Industrial Revolution spread out before me. I've been a high school history teacher for 12 years. I loved my job, loved the stability of it, even if grading papers was a never-ending chore. The house was quiet. Kenneth was at work, or so I thought, and our kids, Toby and Jenny, were at soccer practice. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from my sister, Cynthia. "Hey Val, can you watch the kids this weekend? I met this guy, a consultant, and he wants to take me to the lake house. I think this might be the one." I sighed, rubbing my temples. Cynthia was 31, 3 years younger than me, but she lived her life like a chaotic teenager. She worked in PR, or event marketing as she called it, which mostly seemed to involve attending parties and posting glamorous photos on Instagram. She was always meeting the one. And I was always the safety net. "Sure, Cindy," I typed back, because that's who I was. Valery, the reliable one. Valery, the one who never said no. Valery, the doormat. Growing up, it was always this way. Cynthia was the sparkler, bright, loud, demanding attention. I was the candle, steady, quiet, burning myself out to keep things warm. If Cynthia wanted my doll, she got it because Valery is the big sister, she should share. If Cynthia broke a vase, I took the blame because Valery should have been watching her. It was a dynamic etched into our bones. I went back to grading, but my red pen ran out of ink. I remembered Kenneth had left his laptop in the living room. He said he needed it for a presentation the next morning but must have forgotten to pack it. I walked over to his bag, pulled out the sleek silver computer, and opened it. I just wanted to order some pens and maybe look up a schedule for a pottery exhibition I wanted to see. I've always loved kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold lacquer. There was something beautiful about highlighting the cracks rather than hiding them. Ironic, isn't it? Considering my own life was about to shatter, and I had no gold to fix it with. I opened the browser, and there it was. He hadn't closed his email tab. I'm not a snooper. I respect privacy. But the subject line of the most recent email, sitting right at the top of the inbox, froze the blood in my veins. Reservation confirmation, Silver Lake Resort, luxury couples suite. Silver Lake. That was where Cynthia said she was going with her new guy. My stomach dropped, a physical sensation like missing a step on a staircase. No. It couldn't be. It was a coincidence. Kenneth traveled for work. He was a financial advisor, he had clients everywhere. Maybe he was booking this for a client? My hand trembled as I clicked the email. Guest names, Mr. Kenneth Miller and Ms. Cynthia Vance. The world stopped. The ticking of the kitchen clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of a car passing by, it all vanished into a high-pitched ringing in my ears. Kenneth and Cynthia. My husband. And my sister. I felt like I was going to throw up. I sat heavily on the sofa, scrolling. I shouldn't have looked, but I couldn't stop. There were months of emails. Hotel bookings. Dinner reservations. And then, the chat log synced to the account. I read things no wife should ever have to read. Kenneth, I can't wait to be with you this weekend. Being home is suffocating. Val is just so boring. She talks about history and student loans. With you, I feel alive. Cynthia, don't worry, baby. Soon we won't have to hide. Once you get that bonus and we sort out the trust fund stuff, we can stop pretending. She doesn't have a clue. They were laughing at me. They weren't just betraying me, they were mocking me. They discussed me like I was an obstacle, a piece of old furniture that was in the way of their shiny new life. I sat there for hours. The sun went down, casting long, dark shadows across the living room floor. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat there, holding the laptop, feeling the cold metal against my legs. When I heard Kenneth's car pull into the driveway, I didn't panic. I didn't scramble to hide the evidence. A strange, cold calm had settled over me. It wasn't peace, it was shock. It was the numbness before the pain. The front door opened. Val? Why is it so dark in here? Kenneth's voice was cheerful. He sounded like the man I had loved for 10 years. The father of my children. He flipped the light switch. I blinked against the sudden brightness, looking up at him. He was holding a bottle of wine. Hey, I thought we could celebrate, he said, smiling. I had a great meeting today. I looked at the wine. Then I looked at the laptop screen, still glowing in my lap. I slowly turned the computer around so the screen faced him. The confirmation email for the Silver Lake Resort was bright and damning. Celebrate this? I asked, my voice sounding raspy, like I hadn't used it in years. Kenneth's smile didn't fade gradually. It vanished instantly, replaced by a look of terrified recognition. But then, almost as quickly, his expression shifted to something else. Something defensive. Something ugly. For a moment, the silence in the living room was absolute. I waited for the denial. I expected him to stutter, to claim it was a mistake, a prank, a booking for a client with a weird sense of humor. I was prepared for lies. I wasn't prepared for the truth. Kenneth set the wine bottle down on the entryway table with a heavy thud. He loosened his tie, his eyes cold as he looked at me. There was no remorse in his face. Instead, there was relief. Well, he said, letting out a short, sharp breath. I suppose that saves me the trouble of bringing it up. I felt like I'd been slapped. Bringing it up? You're sleeping with my sister, Kenneth. My sister. You were planning to bring it up like you're discussing a change in our insurance policy? Don't be dramatic, Valerie, he snapped, walking past me into the kitchen to pour himself a glass of water. The casualness of his movement enraged me. He was acting like I was the one being unreasonable. It's not just sleeping together. We're in love. We have a connection that I've never had with you. I stood up, my legs shaking. A connection? You have a connection with a woman who has been borrowing my clothes and stealing my toys since she was 5. And now she's stolen my husband. Kenneth slammed the glass down on the granite countertop. She didn't steal me, Valerie. I wanted to leave. God, you make everything so mundane. Look at you. You're content with your little teaching job, your little pottery hobbies, your coupons and your schedules. It's suffocating. You're suffocating. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and stinging. I built this life with you. I supported you when you were starting your firm. I paid the bills when you had no clients. I gave you stability. I don't want stability, he shouted, his face turning red. I want to feel important. When I'm with Cynthia, I feel like a king. She looks at me like I'm the smartest, most powerful man in the room. You look at me like I'm just Kenneth. Just the guy who needs to take out the trash. Because you are just Kenneth. I screamed back, the dam finally breaking. You are a father and a husband, and that used to be enough. Why isn't that enough? He sneered, a look of pure cruelty crossing his face. Because I deserve better than average. And Cynthia knows my worth. She appreciates the finer things. She has ambition. Ambition? I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. She has an appetite, Kenneth. There's a difference. She wants what other people have. She doesn't want to build anything, she just wants to take. I'm leaving, he said abruptly, turning toward the bedroom. I'm packing a bag. I'm going to her place tonight. You can't just walk out on your children, I said, following him. Toby has a science fair next week. Jenny has dance recital. How are you going to explain this to them? We'll tell them we grew apart, he said, pulling a suitcase from the closet. He started throwing expensive suits into it, suits I had picked out, suits paid for with our joint funds. And don't you dare try to poison them against me. I have rights. I watched him pack, leaning against the doorframe for support. Does she know? Does Cynthia know you're coming? Of course, he said, zipping the bag shut. We talk about everything. He walked past me, bumping my shoulder, not even glancing back. The front door slammed, and the sound echoed through the empty house like a gunshot. I was alone. But the nightmare wasn't over. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Cynthia. I stared at the screen, my hand hovering. Part of me wanted to smash the phone. But the other part, the part of me that was still the big sister, still couldn't believe she would do this. I answered. Valerie? Her voice wasn't apologetic. It was shrill, defensive. Ken just called me. He said you know. How could you? I whispered. Cindy, he's my husband. He's the father of your niece and nephew. Oh, stop the victim act, Val, she snapped. You know you two haven't been happy for years. You're just going through the motions. Ken was miserable. I saved him. You saved him? I repeated, incredulous. By sleeping with him behind my back for 6 months? We fell in love, she cried. We couldn't help it. And honestly, if you were a better wife, if you paid more attention to his needs instead of burying your nose in those history books, maybe he wouldn't have looked elsewhere. You always act so perfect, but you're cold, Val. You're boring. I'm your sister, I said, my voice breaking. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It means I know you, she retorted. I know you'll be fine. You're always fine. You're strong, independent Valery. You don't need him. But I do. I need someone to take care of me. And Ken wants to do that. He's not a prize, Cynthia, I said, my voice hardening. He's a traitor. And so are you. Whatever, she huffed. Don't expect me to apologize for being happy. And don't try to turn the family against us. Mom and Dad always said you were the rigid one. They'll understand. She hung up. I stood in the center of my kitchen, holding the dead phone. I felt stripped bare. My husband thought I was boring. My sister thought I was cold. They had rewritten the history of my life to justify their betrayal. They had cast me as the villain in my own story so they could be the heroes of their romance. But as I looked around the house I kept clean, the house filled with photos of our children, the house paid for largely by my study teaching salary while Kenneth chased commissions, I realized something. I wasn't just sad. I was angry. A deep, volcanic anger was beginning to bubble up beneath the shock. They thought I was weak. They thought I would just cry and fade away. They were wrong. The next few weeks were a blur of humiliation. You think the betrayal is the hardest part? It's not. It's the noise. It's the way the betrayal echoes through your entire community, distorting everything. Kenneth moved straight into Cynthia's apartment downtown. They didn't even have the decency to wait. Within 48 hours, Cynthia posted a photo on Facebook. It was the two of them, holding hands over a candlelit dinner, with the caption, "Finally happy." Sometimes you have to follow your heart, no matter the cost. #new beginnings, #true love. It made me physically ill. But what was worse were the comments. Mutual friends, people who had been to our barbecues, people whose kids played with mine, were heart-reacting. Someone commented, "You guys look amazing. So happy for you." I felt like I was living in the Twilight Zone. Did no one care that he was married? That he had left his children? Then the whispers started. I live in a relatively small suburb. Everyone knows everyone. I went to the grocery store a week after Kenneth left. I was standing in the cereal aisle, staring blankly at the boxes of Cheerios, trying to calculate if I could afford the name brand or if I needed to switch to generic, when I heard voices from the next aisle. I heard she was impossible to live with, a woman's voice said. I recognized it. It was Mrs. Gable, a neighbor 2 streets over. Kenneth told my Bob that she was emotionally abusive. Controlling. Checked his phone constantly, wouldn't let him spend his own money. Really? Another voice gasped. She always seemed so quiet. That's how they are, Mrs. Gable replied knowingly. It's the quiet ones. He said he felt suffocated. Said she let herself go and refused to be intimate. Honestly, Cynthia is a handful, but at least she's alive. You can't blame a man for wanting a little warmth. I abandoned my cart right there in the aisle and walked out of the store, shaking. They were spinning the narrative. Kenneth and Cynthia were preemptively striking, painting me as the frigid, controlling shrew so that their affair looked like a desperate escape rather than a selfish indulgence. They were weaponizing my privacy. Because I didn't air my dirty laundry, because I didn't post rants on social media, my silence was being used to confirm their lies. I went home and locked the door. I felt isolated, surrounded by a community that judged me for being the victim. But the emotional isolation was quickly overshadowed by a more pressing reality, money. I sat down to pay the bills. I logged into our joint checking account, the one we used for the mortgage and utilities. Balance, $14.50. I blinked, refreshing the page. That couldn't be right. There should have been at least $4,000 in there to cover the mortgage and the credit card bills. I checked the transaction history. On the day Kenneth left, there was a transfer. Transfer to external account ending in 8890 for $1,200. He had drained it. He had taken every single cent. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at my throat. I checked our savings account, the emergency fund we had been building for 5 years. Balance, $0. I checked the credit card statements. My jaw dropped. In the last 3 months, the balance had ballooned to $15,000. The charges were dizzying. Tiffany and Company. Four Seasons Hotel. Nordstrom. Fine dining restaurants. While I was clipping coupons and buying generic cereal, Kenneth had been financing a luxury lifestyle for my sister using our credit. He had maxed out the cards. I called him immediately. It went to voicemail. I called again. Finally, he picked up. Valerie, stop calling me. I'm in a meeting. You stole the money, I said, my voice trembling with rage. You emptied the joint accounts. How am I supposed to pay the mortgage? How am I supposed to buy food for the kids? I didn't steal anything, he said calmly, and his calmness was terrifying. That was my money. I earned it. I'm the one who brings in the big commissions, remember? You're just a teacher. It's marital assets, Kenneth. We live in a community property state. You can't just take it all. Watch me, he sneered. And as for the credit cards, well, the courts will divide that debt. Half is yours. Consider it the cost of being a terrible wife. Kenneth, please, I begged, hating myself for it. The mortgage is due in 3 days. I don't have it. Ask your rich grandmother, he said. Oh wait, she hasn't kicked the bucket yet, has she? Figure it out, Val. You're so smart. Figure it out. He hung up. I stared at the phone. I was broke. I was in debt. My reputation was in tatters. And the man who promised to love and cherish me was trying to starve me out. I needed a divorce lawyer. I needed to fight for custody. I needed to protect my salary. But lawyers cost money, money I didn't have. I looked at my children's school photos on the fridge. Toby, with his missing front tooth. Jenny, with her messy pigtails. They were innocent in this. And Kenneth was willing to let the roof be taken from over their heads just to buy Cynthia diamond earrings. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, going through every single financial document I could find. And that's when I found the statement that turned my fear into pure, unadulterated fury. The next morning, the phone calls started. Not from friends, but from creditors. Ms. Miller? This is Citibank. We're calling about your overdue payment. Ms. Miller? This is the mortgage lender. We noticed a missed payment. I spent the morning dodging calls during my free period at school, hiding in the supply closet so my colleagues wouldn't hear me begging for extensions. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my coffee mug, shattering it on the floor. I stared at the broken ceramic pieces and thought about kintsugi again. You can fix broken pottery with gold, but what do you use to fix a life when you can't even afford the glue? I needed to know the full extent of the damage. I knew about the checking account. I knew about the credit cards. But there was something else nagging at me. Years ago, when Toby was born, my grandmother Josephine had set up a specialized education trust for the children. She had put in a substantial amount, enough to cover state college for both of them. Because Kenneth was a financial advisor, Grandma had trusted him to manage the portfolio. She signed over trustee privileges to him, believing his expertise would grow the money. I logged into the investment portal. Kenneth had never given me the password, saying it was too complicated and boring for me, but I knew he used the same password for everything, Cynthia 1992. God, the signs were there all along, weren't they? I typed it in. It worked. The dashboard loaded. I looked for the account labeled Miller Children Education Trust. Balance, $248.50. I stopped breathing. I actually stopped breathing. There should have been over $60,000 in there. I clicked on the transaction history. It wasn't one big withdrawal. It was a slow bleed over the last 18 months. $5,000 withdrawal, purpose, reinvestment, Shadow Creek LLC, $3,500 withdrawal, purpose, admin fees, $8,000 withdrawal, purpose, market adjustment. He hadn't just stolen my money. He had stolen his own children's future. Shadow Creek LLC? I quickly Googled it. It was a shell company. No website. No address, just a P.O. box in Nevada. He was funneling the money out. He was laundering our children's college fund to pay for his affair, his gambling, or God knows what else. The grief I had been feeling evaporated. The sadness that had been weighing down my limbs lifted. In its place, a cold, hard rage settled in my chest. It was heavier than sadness, but it was useful. Sadness makes you stay in bed. Rage makes you move. He could hurt me. He could leave me. He could humiliate me. But stealing from Toby and Jenny? That was a declaration of war. I printed every single page. My printer ran out of paper, so I drove to the school and used the faculty printer, watching page after page of evidence slide into the tray. I realized then that I had been playing the wrong game. I had been playing the heartbroken wife hoping for closure. Kenneth was playing scorched earth. I needed an ally. I couldn't afford a high-powered lawyer yet, but I had something better. I had the matriarch of the family. I had the woman who actually owned the money Kenneth was trying so desperately to inherit. I picked up the phone and called Grandma Josephine. "Grandma?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Valerie?" She sounded surprised. I hadn't called in weeks, too ashamed of the mess my life had become. "Is everything all right?" "No," I said. "No, it's not. Kenneth left me for Cynthia." There was a long silence on the other end. "I suspected as much," she said dryly. "Cynthia has been posting ridiculous photographs. But why are you calling me now, dear?" "Because," I took a deep breath. "He didn't just leave me. He emptied the education trust. He stole the money you gave the great-grandchildren." The silence that followed was different. It wasn't the silence of surprise, it was the silence of a predator spotting prey. "Come to dinner tonight," Grandma said. Her voice was ice-cold. "Bring the paperwork. And bring Raymond. Uncle Ray. Grandma's son, my uncle. He was the current CEO of Green Antiques, the family business. He was a quiet man, totally unlike my flashy sister or my smooth-talking ex-husband. He was an accountant by trade, a man who loved numbers more than people." "Okay," I said. "And Valerie?" "Yes, Grandma?" "Stop crying," she commanded. "Tears are for funerals. This is a hunt." I wiped my face. She was right. I drove to Grandma's estate that evening. It was the same house where the Christmas party would eventually take place, but tonight it felt like a fortress. I walked in with my binder of evidence. Uncle Ray was already there, sitting at the long mahogany dining table with a calculator and a notepad. I laid it all out. The hotel receipts. The credit card statements. The gutted trust fund. The shell company transfers. Uncle Ray went through the papers silently. He adjusted his glasses, tapping numbers into his calculator. Grandma sat at the head of the table, sipping tea, her eyes fixed on Ray's face. After 20 minutes, Ray looked up. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "It's clumsy," Ray said. He got arrogant. He thought no one would check because he was the finance guy of the family. "This is embezzlement, Mother. Pure and simple. And because he crossed state lines with the transfers to Nevada, it's federal wire fraud." Grandma Josephine set her cup down. "He stole from my great-grandchildren to buy handbags for my granddaughter." "Yes," I said. "And Cynthia?" Grandma asked. "Does she know?" I pulled out the credit card statements showing the purchases made in Cynthia's name using the stolen funds. "She's spending it. She has to know he doesn't make this kind of money legitimately. She doesn't care." Grandma looked at the portrait of my grandfather hanging on the wall. "I built this legacy to protect this family. Kenneth thinks he can dismantle it for sport." She turned to me. "Valerie, you need a lawyer. A shark. I will pay for it. Ray, call Mr. Sterling." But Grandma raised a hand, stopping me from thanking her. "We do not strike yet. If we sue him now, he will hide the rest of the assets. He will claim it was bad investments. We need him to feel safe. We need him to think he has won." "Why?" I asked. "Because," Grandma smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. "When a man feels safe, he makes mistakes. Christmas is in 2 months. We will let him play his games until then." The meeting at Grandma's house shifted something in the atmosphere. Before, I was drowning. Now, I was treading water with a lifeline. Mr. Sterling, the lawyer Uncle Ray hired, was a man who looked like he smiled once a decade. He was expensive, sharp, and terrifyingly efficient. He listened to my story, looked at Ray's forensic accounting, and simply nodded. "We have him," Sterling said. "But Mrs. Green is right. We need to secure your position before we pull the trigger. We need to document everything. Record every interaction. Do not engage in arguments. Let him dig his hole." So, I began my double life. By day, I was the struggling single mom. I went to the food bank to get groceries because I genuinely had no cash left for food after paying the mortgage with the small loan Grandma gave me. I let the neighbors gossip. I let Mrs. Gable look at me with pity. I wore my old clothes. I didn't defend myself when people whispered that I was falling apart. By night, I was an investigator. I worked with Uncle Ray, digging through old tax returns, finding discrepancies in Kenneth's filings from years ago. We found out that Kenneth wasn't just stealing from us, he was leveraging his position in the family to get loans from Ray's business contacts, claiming he was the future CEO of Green Antiques. "He's been positioning himself to take over the company when I retire," Ray told me one evening, his voice tight with anger. "He's been telling the board members that I'm losing my touch, that Grandma is senile, and that he's the only one who can modernize the brand." "And Cynthia?" I asked. "She's his PR machine," Ray said. "She's been attending industry events, introducing him as the heir apparent. They aren't just stealing money, Val. They're trying to stage a corporate coup." It made sense. Kenneth didn't just want a new wife, he wanted an empire. And Cynthia wanted to be the queen. They needed me out of the way, and they needed Grandma to die or be declared incompetent. He asked me about Grandma's health again, I told Ray. When he came to pick up the kids, he asked if she was forgetting things. "He's building a case for competency hearings," Ray surmised. "He wants power of attorney." Every piece of information was fed to Grandma Josephine. She sat in her armchair, listening, nodding, her face unreadable. She played her part perfectly. When Kenneth called her, she acted frail. She pretended to forget names. She complained about being tired. "Oh, Kenneth, she would say on the speakerphone while Ray and I listened, holding our breath. I just don't understand these new tax laws. I'm so glad I have you to handle the trust. Don't worry, Grandma, Kenneth would say, his voice dripping with fake concern. I'll take care of everything. You just rest. It was sickening. But it was working. Kenneth was getting bolder. But the hardest part wasn't the deception. It was the children. Because while we were playing 4D chess with legal documents, Kenneth was playing dirty with Toby and Jenny. He had visitation every other weekend. And because he had stolen our savings, he had money to burn. He became Disney Dad. He picked them up in a leased sports car. He took them to theme parks, bought them the latest video games, took them to 5-star restaurants. When they came home on Sunday evenings, the transition was brutal. Why is the house so cold? Jenny complained, dropping her new designer backpack on the floor. Dad's apartment is warm. And he has a huge TV. I'm keeping the heat down to save money, sweetie, I said, trying to help her with her coat. Dad says you have money, you're just being mean, Toby said, not looking at me. He was 9, old enough to understand tension but young enough to be manipulated. He says you want to punish him so you won't buy us stuff. That's not true, Toby, I said, my heart breaking. Dad and I have different budgets right now. Aunt Cindy is nice, Jenny added, twisting the knife. She let me try on her makeup. She says you're too strict. She says you need to loosen up. Yeah, Toby muttered. Dad says you're boring. He says we're going to go live with him soon so we can have fun all the time. I had to walk into the bathroom and turn on the shower so they wouldn't hear me scream. This was parental alienation. He was buying their love with stolen money and poisoning their minds against me. I wanted to shake them. I wanted to scream, *, he stole your college fund. That Xbox he bought you cost your future. *. But I couldn't. Mr. Sterling had been clear. Do not disparage the father. The courts look down on it. Be the stability. Be the safe harbor. So I cooked them spaghetti with generic sauce. I helped them with their homework. I read them stories. I swallowed the insults they repeated from their father and aunt. I was the villain in their eyes right now. But I held on to Grandma's promise. Christmas. Christmas was coming. And the bill was coming due. November dragged on. The leaves fell, the air turned bitter cold, and my patience was wearing thin. The psychological warfare Kenneth was waging on the children was escalating. It wasn't just about buying them things anymore, it was about erasing me. One Wednesday, I went to pick up the kids from school. Toby walked out of the building holding a brand new iPhone. He was 9. I had explicitly told Kenneth, no phones until middle school. Look, Mom. Toby said, showing it off. Dad gave it to me so I can call him whenever I want. He says you might try to stop me from talking to him. I gripped the steering wheel. Toby, we talked about this. You're too young for a phone. Dad says you're just trying to control me, Toby shot back, his tone insolent. He says you want to cut him out of our lives. That is not true, I said firmly. But there are rules. Dad says rules are for people who don't trust their kids, Toby recited. It sounded exactly like Kenneth. Then came the Thanksgiving break. It was my year to have them for Thanksgiving, according to the temporary custody arrangement. I had planned a small, cozy dinner. Just me, the kids, and a turkey breast. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Kenneth called. The kids want to come to Aspen with us, he said. No hello. No preamble. It's my holiday, Kenneth, I said. We have a court order. I know, he sighed, sounding exasperated. But Cindy and I rented a chalet. Skiing, hot cocoa, the works. The kids are dying to go. Do you really want to be the bad guy who forces them to stay in that drafty house with dry turkey when they could be skiing? I looked at Toby and Jenny. They were watching me with wide, hopeful eyes. They had never been skiing. They looked so excited. If I said no, I was the witch. If I said yes, I was the doormat. Please, Mom? Jenny whispered. Aunt Cindy said she bought me a pink snowsuit. My heart shattered. He was using their happiness as a weapon. Fine, I whispered. You can go. Yes. Toby cheered. Thanks, Mom. You're okay. They left. I spent Thanksgiving alone, eating a sandwich over the sink, scrolling through Instagram seeing photos of my children building a snowman with Cynthia. Cynthia was wearing a white fur coat, looking like a snow queen. Kenneth was holding Toby on his shoulders. They looked like a perfect family. I was erased. I cried until I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was losing them. Not just physically, but emotionally. I was losing the battle for their hearts because I couldn't compete with the Disneyland fantasy Kenneth was selling. But then, a mistake. When they returned on Sunday, Jenny was quiet. She went straight to her room. I followed her. Did you have fun, sweetie? I asked. Jenny looked at me, her lip trembling. Aunt Cindy got mad. What happened? I accidentally spilled hot chocolate on the white rug in the rental, Jenny sniffled. It was an accident. But Aunt Cindy screamed at me. She said I was a clumsy little brat and that I was ruining everything. I stiffened. She yelled at you? Yeah, Jenny cried. And Daddy didn't do anything. He just told me to go to my room so Cindy could calm down. He said Cindy is under a lot of stress because of you. Because of me? He said you're trying to steal his money and that's why Cindy is stressed, Jenny sobbed. Mom, are you stealing Daddy's money? Rage, pure and hot, flooded my veins. They were screaming at my 7-year-old and blaming me for it. I pulled Jenny into my arms. No, baby. I am not stealing Daddy's money. Daddy and Cindy are just confused. But listen to me. No one is allowed to call you a brat. Not even adults. Okay? I wanted to come home, Jenny whispered. I missed you. You never scream when I spill things. I held her tight. The Disneyland fantasy had cracks. Kenneth and Cynthia were selfish people. Selfish people can act nice when things are going their way, but the moment there's a mess, the moment a child is inconvenient, the mask slips. I realized then that I didn't need to buy their love. I just had to be safe. I had to be the parent who was there when the hot chocolate spilled. It's okay, I soothed her. You're home now. That night, I called Uncle Ray. They're cracking, I said. Cynthia is losing her temper with the kids. Kenneth is blaming me for their financial stress. Good, Ray said. That means the money is running out. He's burned through the stolen cash faster than we thought. Is everything ready for the party? I asked. Yes, Ray said. Mr. Sterling has the documents prepared. The trap is set. I'm ready, I said. And for the first time in months, I meant it. December arrived with a vengeance, bringing snowstorms and the final act of our play. The invitation arrived in the mail. It was heavy, cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing. The annual Green Family Christmas Eve Gala. Hosted by Josephine Green. Kenneth got one too. I knew because he texted me immediately. Kenneth, see you at the party. Try to dress decent. My partners are going to be there. Don't embarrass me. The audacity was breathtaking. He was invited as a courtesy, as the father of the great-grandchildren, and he was already acting like he was the host. He invited his partners? He was treating this family gathering as a networking event for his fraudulent schemes. I was terrified. The thought of walking into that room, seeing them together, facing the extended family who all thought I was a bitter, frigid failure, it made me want to curl up in a ball. I called Grandma. I don't think I can do it, I confessed. Kenneth is bringing business partners. Cynthia has bought a dress that probably costs more than my car. I'm just the ex-wife. Valery, Grandma said sharply. You are not the ex-wife. You are the granddaughter. You are the heir. You are the mother of the future generation. You need to stop acting like a guest in your own life. But everyone looks at me like I'm pathetic, I said. Then give them something else to look at, Grandma said. Wear red. Red? Red, she repeated. It's the color of war. It's the color of power. Do not wear black. Do not wear beige. Wear red. Walk in there with your head high. You know the truth. They are the ones walking on a trapdoor. You are the one holding the lever. Remember that. I went to the mall. I couldn't afford a designer dress, but I found a boutique that was closing down. I found it on the clearance rack. A deep crimson velvet gown. It was off the shoulder, fitted at the waist, and flowed to the floor. It was dramatic. It was bold. It was completely unlike me. I bought it. On Christmas Eve, I spent 2 hours getting ready. I put on makeup, real makeup, not just tinted moisturizer. I curled my hair. I put on the pearl earrings my grandfather had given me for my 16th birthday. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the tired teacher. I didn't see the broke single mom. I saw a woman who had survived hell. Toby and Jenny were dressed in their holiday best. Wow, Mom, Toby said, stopping in his tracks. You look like a movie star. You look pretty, Jenny said, touching the velvet of my dress. Like a queen. Thank you, I smiled, grabbing my purse. Let's go see Grandma. We drove to the lake house. The driveway was packed with luxury cars. Kenneth's leased BMW was parked right in the front, next to Cynthia's convertible. My heart started hammering again. This was it. The confrontation. I took a deep breath, inhaling the cold winter air. I thought about the text messages. I thought about the empty bank account. I thought about the college fund. I thought about Jenny crying over spilled hot chocolate. I wasn't doing this for me. I was doing this for them. I took my children's hands. Ready? Ready, they said. I pushed open the heavy oak doors and stepped into the warmth of the gala. The noise of the party hit me. Laughter, clinking glasses, jazz music. As I walked in, heads turned. Not because I was causing a scene, but because of the dress. Because of the confidence I was faking until I made it. I saw Kenneth across the room. He was laughing, holding court with a group of men in suits. He looked up. His eyes widened. He looked surprised, and then, for a split second, unsettled. Cynthia was next to him, in her emerald green dress. She saw me and her eyes narrowed. She whispered something to Kenneth, and he smirked, regaining his composure. They thought I was there to beg. They thought I was there to make a scene or to plead for money. They had no idea. I walked straight past them, not acknowledging their existence, and went to my grandmother. She was sitting in her chair, observing the room like a hawk. When she saw me, her stern face softened into a smile. Perfect, she whispered as I leaned down to kiss her cheek. The wolf is in the pen. And the hunter has arrived. Is everything ready? I asked. Lawrence Sterling is in the library, she said. The papers are signed. Tonight, we rewrite history. I stood up and turned to face the room. Kenneth was approaching me, a smug grin on his face, a glass of champagne in his hand. Valerie, he said, his voice loud enough for people nearby to hear. Glad you could make it. I was worried you couldn't afford the gas. He laughed at his own joke. Cynthia giggled. I looked him dead in the eye. Enjoy the champagne, Kenneth, I said coolly. It's the last thing you'll ever taste in this house. He frowned, confused. What is that supposed to mean? It means, I said, checking my watch, that it's almost showtime. And that brings us back to the moment where Grandma Josephine stood up, silenced the room, and opened the leather folder. The moment Kenneth's smug smile began to fade. The moment the trapdoor was unlatched. I think you all better sit down, Grandma had said. And now, she began to read. You would think that people who are about to walk the plank would feel the wood bending beneath their feet, but Kenneth and Cynthia were dancing on the edge of the abyss without a care in the world. The dining room at the Green Estate was a masterpiece of old-world intimidation. The walls were paneled in dark mahogany, lined with portraits of ancestors who seemed to stare down in judgment. The long table was set with Grandma Josephine's finest silver, forks heavy enough to be weapons, and crystal glasses that caught the light of the chandelier. I took my seat next to Uncle Ray. Kenneth and Cynthia sat directly across from us. It was a strategic placement by Grandma. She wanted them to look us in the eye. She wanted to see if they would blink. They didn't. Kenneth settled into his chair, shaking out his linen napkin with the air of a man who already owned the furniture. He looked around the room, critiquing the architecture loud enough for everyone to hear. You know, Josephine, Kenneth boomed, pouring himself a glass of wine before the servers even arrived, this place has good bones, but the HVAC is ancient. I was telling Cindy on the drive over, the first thing we need to do when we take over management of the estate trust is modernize the heating. Maybe knock down that wall between the kitchen and the dining room. Open concept is what buyers want these days. He gestured casually with his fork toward a load-bearing wall that held the original portraits of my great-grandparents. I felt Uncle Ray stiffen beside me. His knuckles turned white as he gripped his water glass. I placed a hand on his forearm, a silent signal. Wait. Let him dig. Grandma Josephine, seated at the head of the table like a queen on her throne, smiled thinly. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a spider watching a fly land on the web. Is that so, Kenneth? She asked, her voice deceptively light. You have remarkably big plans for a house you don't own. And for money you haven't inherited. It's about asset maximization, Grandma, Cynthia chimed in. She reached over and squeezed Kenneth's hand on top of the table, flashing that massive diamond ring, the one bought with my children's future. Ken is a visionary. He sees value where others just see dust. She looked pointedly at me when she said the word dust. I focused on cutting my prime rib, the knife slicing through the meat with satisfying precision. Devastatingly polite, I reminded myself. Be the ice, not the fire. Speaking of value, Cynthia continued, her voice turning into that syrupy, fake sweet tone she used when she was about to be particularly cruel. She reached under her chair and pulled out a small, rectangular gift bag. Valerie, I have a little something for you. Since it's Christmas. We should be the bigger people, right? We're a modern family now. The chatter at the table died instantly. My cousin Sarah, who had been laughing at Kenneth's jokes earlier, looked down at her plate. Everyone sensed the tension. That's very thoughtful, I said, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. I took the bag. It felt light. I pulled out the tissue paper and revealed a paperback book. It wasn't a nice novel. It wasn't a cookbook. It was a self-help book titled, Starting Over at 40, How to Find Love When Your Best Years Are Behind You. The silence at the table was deafening. I was 34, not 40. The insult was layered, calling me old, calling me washed up, implying that my life was over because her lover had left me. It was vicious. It was a public humiliation disguised as a gift. Cynthia covered her mouth with a delicate hand, feigning innocence, her eyes dancing with malice. Oh, I know you're not 40 yet, Val, but you know how you get tired. You've looked so exhausted lately. I thought it would help you prepare. You know, for the inevitable loneliness. Kenneth chuckled. He actually chuckled, a low, wet sound in the back of his throat. Cindy thought it was funny. Come on, Val, have a sense of humor. You always took everything so seriously. That was always your problem. No spark. I looked at the book. Then I looked at Cynthia. In the past, the old Valery would have cried. I would have run to the bathroom to hide my shame. I would have let them see me bleed. But tonight? Tonight I had a grenade in my pocket, and they had just pulled the pin for me. I smiled. A genuine, bright, terrifying smile. Thank you, Cynthia, I said, placing the book gently on the table next to the crystal goblet. I'll keep it. It might come in handy for you sooner than you think. Did you know that statistics show second marriages starting from affairs have a failure rate of 75% within the first 2 years? And usually, the mistress loses her position the same way she got it. I leaned forward slightly. You might want to read the chapter on karma first. A few cousins gasped. Uncle Ray coughed to hide a laugh. Cynthia's face flushed a patchy red, her composure cracking for the first time. Excuse me, she snapped, her voice rising. Enough, Grandma Josephine said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it stopped the room cold. She wasn't eating. She was watching them with the cold, detached interest of a biologist observing bacteria in a petri dish. Kenneth, I understand you've been inquiring about the Green Antiques Board of Directors? Kenneth straightened up, sensing an opportunity to pivot back to business and regain his dominance. He puffed out his chest. Yes, Josephine. I've been looking at the numbers. Ray is doing a decent job, but you need fresh blood. I have ideas for leveraging the inventory for high-yield crypto investments. The antique market is dead. We need to liquidate the slow-moving assets and put that capital into blockchain. Crypto, Ray repeated, deadpan. You want to bet 100-year-old legacy on cryptocurrency? It's the future, Ray, Kenneth said condescendingly, waving his hand as if dismissing a child. You have to take risks to get rewards. That's why I'm successful. I take what I want. I don't ask for permission. You certainly do, Grandma said softly. You take exactly what you want. Regardless of who it belongs to. And honestly, Kenneth continued, emboldened by the wine and the silence of the room, Valery owning shares is just a liability. She doesn't understand finance. She's a school teacher. She thinks net worth is a fishing term. When the transition happens, I'd be happy to buy her out. For a fair price, of course. Minus the debt she's racking up. I gripped my steak knife until my hand shook. He was talking about buying me out of my own family's company using money he probably intended to steal from the company itself. He was planning to erase me from my own legacy. Interesting proposal, Grandma said. She dabbed her mouth with her napkin. You believe you are the future of this family, Kenneth? I think the results speak for themselves, Kenneth said, leaning back, draping his arm around Cynthia's shoulders. We're the power couple. We're the ones moving forward. Valery is, well, she's the past. Yes, Grandma said, her eyes hard as flint. The results certainly do speak for themselves. She signaled the waiters to clear the plates. The dinner ended. We moved to the living room for the festivities. Kenneth and Cynthia walked ahead, whispering and giggling, convinced they had dominated the conversation. They didn't see the look Grandma Josephine exchanged with Uncle Ray. It was the look of an executioner sharpening the axe. And that brings us to the fireplace. To the moment Grandma stood up. To the moment she opened the leather folder. The living room was warm, the fire crackling cheerfully in the hearth, but the atmosphere was 0 degrees Kelvin. "I think you all better sit down," Grandma repeated. Kenneth sat on the plush velvet sofa, legs spread wide, radiating confidence. Cynthia perched next to him, smoothing her emerald dress, looking bored. "I, Josephine Elizabeth Green, being of sound mind and body," Grandma read, her voice ringing out like a church bell, "do hereby revoke all former wills and codicils made by me." She looked up over her reading glasses, scanning the room. Article 1, the trust. Kenneth yawned. He actually yawned. He checked his watch, clearly wondering how long this old woman would ramble before he could get back to his champagne. "For the past 3 years," Grandma continued, holding the document steady, "I entrusted the management of the Miller Children's Education Trust to my grandson-in-law, Kenneth Miller. This trust was established to ensure that my great-grandchildren, Toby and Jenny, would have their futures secured. It was funded with an initial principal of $200,000. Kenneth's confident posture slipped. He uncrossed his legs. "Grandma, we don't need to do the legal mumbo-jumbo now. It's Christmas." Article 1, Section A, Grandma read over him, her voice rising in volume and intensity. "Due to gross fiduciary misconduct, embezzlement, and breach of trust, Kenneth Miller is hereby stripped of all trustee duties, effective immediately. Furthermore, a civil suit has been filed this morning to recover the sum of $248,000. The room gasped. It wasn't a polite gasp. It was the sound of 20 people sucking in air at once. My Aunt Martha dropped her wine glass, it shattered on the hardwood floor, but no one even looked down. "That's a lie." Kenneth shot up from the sofa. His face went from flesh to a sickly pale in a heartbeat. "That's, Josephine, you're confused. The market has been volatile. I moved those funds to protect them. I was diversifying." "Sit down, Kenneth," Uncle Ray said. His voice was deep and menacing. He stood up from his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. "We have the receipts. We have the transfers to Shadow Creek LLC. We know it's a shell company registered in your name in Nevada. We know you used the debit card attached to that account to pay for the business trip to Cabo San Lucas." Kenneth froze. He looked like a deer in headlights, realizing the car wasn't stopping. $200,000? Cynthia whispered. She turned to Kenneth, her eyes wide. "Ken? You said that money was your bonus. You said the necklace, you said the trip to Bali was from your performance bonus." "It was." Kenneth stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "They don't understand high-level investing. I borrowed against the principal to leverage a short position." "You spent $40,000 on luxury hotels and jewelry in 6 months," I said, speaking for the first time. "While I was buying generic cereal and begging the utility company not to shut off the lights. You stole from your own children to impress my sister." Grandma ignored him and turned the page. The sound of the crisp paper turning was the only sound in the room. Article 2, the Green Antique Shares. She looked at Cynthia now. "My granddaughter, Amanda Cynthia Vance. You have always claimed that you deserve a place in this company. You have claimed that Valery is too passive, too boring to carry the legacy. You have lobbied me for a seat on the board for 5 years." Cynthia straightened up, a flicker of hope returning to her eyes. Maybe she was still safe. Maybe she was the backup plan. She smoothed her hair. "I just want what's best for the brand, Grandma." "However," Grandma said, her voice dropping an octave, "integrity is the currency of this family. And you are bankrupt. I have learned," Grandma read from the preamble of the new section, "that my granddaughter conspired with a direct competitor, Antique World, to leak our upcoming acquisition lists in exchange for a job offer for her partner, Kenneth. This is corporate espionage. I didn't, Cynthia shrieked. That's a lie. Who told you that? That's slander. You did, Grandma said calmly. Or rather, your emails did. Did you really think you could use the company server to send those messages, you foolish girl? Did you think Ray wouldn't audit the outbox? Cynthia slumped back, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. The realization that her secret betrayal, her plan to sell out the family for a quick payday, was known, crushed her. Therefore, Grandma declared, I am removing Amanda Cynthia Vance from the list of beneficiaries entirely. You will receive no shares. You will receive no dividends. And the lakefront property that was earmarked for you, the property you and Kenneth were already measuring for drapes. Grandma paused. She looked at me. For the first time all night, her eyes were warm. They were filled with pride. The lakefront property, along with 60% controlling interest in Green Antiques, is hereby bequeathed to my granddaughter, Valerie Miller. To be held in her name, protected by a generational trust that no spouse can touch. The silence broke. What? Kenneth roared. Valerie? She's a school teacher. She doesn't know how to run a business. She'll run it into the ground. She's weak. Valerie, Grandma said, ignoring him, has shown more resilience, more intelligence, and more dignity in the last 8 months than you have shown in your entire life. She uncovered your fraud. She documented your lies. And she did it while raising my great-grandchildren without a penny of help from you. Grandma closed the folder with a snap. You wanted to buy her out, Kenneth? You wanted to push her aside? Well, as of tonight, she is your landlord. She is your creditor. And if you ever want to see a dime of this family's money again, you will have to go through her. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I looked at Kenneth. The man who had called me boring. The man who had told our children I was stealing his money. He looked small. He looked pathetic. You can't do this, Kenneth hissed, stepping forward, his hands balled into fists. I have rights. I have marital rights to her assets. We are still legally married. Half of that company is mine. Actually, a new voice spoke up. Mr. Sterling, the lawyer, stepped out from the shadows of the library doorway. He was holding a briefcase and looked like he was about to deliver the final nail in the coffin. You signed a prenuptial agreement 10 years ago, Mr. Miller, Sterling said, his voice smooth as silk. It stated that any inheritance remains separate property. And regarding the marital assets, well, since you drained the joint accounts and committed fraud against the children's trust, a judge has already granted an emergency freezing of your personal assets as of 4 p.m. today. You froze my accounts? Kenneth whispered. My crypto? We froze everything, Ray said, stepping next to Mr. Sterling. Your checking, your savings, your wallet. You can't even buy a pack of gum right now, Ken. Your cards will be declined. The realization hit him. He wasn't just disinherited. He was broke. He was exposed. He was ruined. And then, Cynthia did the one thing I didn't expect. She screamed. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated entitlement. A tantrum of a toddler trapped in a 31-year-old woman's body. This isn't fair. Cynthia shrieked, jumping up so fast her chair toppled over backward with a crash that echoed like a gunshot. You can't do this to me. I am your granddaughter. I am the pretty one. I am the one who brings life to this family. Valerie she's just a shadow. She's boring. She's nothing. She pointed a manicured finger at me, her face twisted into an ugly mask of rage, her makeup beginning to smear. You did this. You poisoned her against us. You've been whispering in her ear, playing the victim, crying about your little teaching job. I slowly stood up. The red velvet dress rustled softly. I didn't shout. I didn't scream. I felt that strange, cold calm wash over me again. It was the calm of someone who knows they are holding a royal flush while their opponent is bluffing with a pair of twos. I didn't have to whisper anything, Cynthia, I said, my voice cutting through her hysteria. You shouted who you were. You shouted it when you slept with my husband. You shouted it when you mocked me to my neighbors. You shouted it when you yelled at my 7-year-old daughter for spilling hot chocolate because you were stressed about money you didn't earn. She's a liar. Cynthia turned to the family, looking for allies. She looked at Aunt Sarah, who had always been her biggest cheerleader. Sarah, you know me. You know I wouldn't do that. Tell them. Aunt Sarah, who had been laughing at Cynthia's jokes an hour ago, looked down at her shoes, unable to meet her gaze. Actually, Cindy, stealing the kids' college fund? That's low. Even for you. It was an investment. Kenneth yelled, trying to regain control of the room. He stepped toward Grandma Josephine, invading her personal space. His face was red, veins bulging in his neck. He looked dangerous. You listen to me, old woman. You can't cut me out. I managed this portfolio for years. I know where the bodies are buried. I know about the tax shelters in Delaware. If you try to ruin me, I will drag this company through every regulatory agency in the state. I will audit you until you're dead. Uncle Ray moved fast, stepping between Kenneth and Grandma, his fists clenched. But I was faster. I stepped in front of Kenneth. I was shorter than him, but in that moment, I felt 10 feet tall. I looked up into his eyes I used to love, eyes I used to trust, and saw nothing but a frightened, angry child. You don't have any leverage, Kenneth, I said. You think you know where the bodies are buried? We are the ones holding the shovel. Those Delaware tax shelters? They were closed 5 years ago. Everything is clean. We audited ourselves last month. We are bulletproof. You, however, have wire fraud charges pending. Get out of my face, Val, he spat, spittle landing on my cheek. You're pathetic. You think because you have mommy and daddy's money now, you're special? You're still the same boring, unlovable woman I left. You're nothing without me. I am everything without you, I said. I am a mother who protected her children. I am a sister who kept your secrets for too long. And now? Now I'm the plaintiff. The plaintiff? He sneered. You don't have the guts. Mr. Sterling? I called out, not taking my eyes off Kenneth. Yes, Mrs. Miller? Sterling replied, stepping forward with his phone in hand. Please explain to my ex-husband what happens if he doesn't leave this property in the next 5 minutes. Certainly, Sterling said, checking his watch with exaggerated slowness. I have the sheriff's deputy parked at the gate. Given the scale of the theft, over $250,000, this is a felony. If you are still on the premises in 5 minutes, I will have you arrested for criminal trespassing. And then we will add the fraud charges on Monday morning. I believe the county jail is quite cold this time of year. Kenneth looked at Sterling. Then he looked at Ray, who was cracking his knuckles, looking ready to physically throw him out. Then he looked at the room full of family members who were staring at him with a mixture of horror and disgust. The air went out of him. The bluster, the arrogance, the king of the world persona, it all deflated. He realized he was surrounded. He turned to Cynthia. Come on. Let's go. Cynthia was crying now, mascara running down her face in black streaks. But my coat. My coat is in the coat room. It's a Burberry. Leave it. Kenneth snapped, grabbing her arm roughly. We're leaving. You're hurting me, she whined, pulling away. I said move. He shoved her toward the door. It was ugly. It was raw. The perfect couple who had walked in holding hands, sneering at everyone else, were now snarling at each other like trapped rats. As they reached the heavy oak doors, Kenneth turned back one last time. He looked at me. There was hate in his eyes, but also fear. Deep, gnawing fear. "This isn't over, Valery," he said. "You'll regret this. I'll take the kids. I swear to God, I'll take the kids." "The only thing I regret," I said, "is not doing this 8 months ago." "Get out." He slammed the door. The sound echoed through the house, shaking the ornaments on the tree, a final punctuation mark to their reign of terror. The silence that followed was heavy. Then, Grandma Josephine let out a long sigh and sat back down in her chair. "Well," she said, smoothing her skirt. "That was unpleasant. But necessary." She looked at me. "Are you all right, Valery?" I looked at the closed door. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash. I felt light. I felt clean. "I'm fine, Grandma," I said. And for the first time in a year, it wasn't a lie. I'm actually really fine. If you are listening to this right now, and you are cheering for Valery, do me a favor. Hit that like button and comment the number 1 down below. Let me know you're with me, that you stand against betrayal, and that you believe in karma. Your support keeps me going. Comment 1 now, and let's see what happened when the dust settled. The party didn't exactly continue after that. It's hard to go back to sipping eggnog and talking about the weather when you've just witnessed a family execution. But something shifted in the room. The atmosphere changed from tension to a sort of stunned reverence. Uncle Ray walked over to the large flat-screen TV mounted above the fireplace in the adjacent lounge. He plugged in a USB drive. "For anyone who thinks this was harsh," Ray announced to the lingering guests, his voice grave, "or for anyone who might be tempted to believe Cynthia's version of events later, because we all know she will spin a story, look at this. We want total transparency." He clicked a button. Images filled the screen. It was a slideshow of evidence. Not boring spreadsheets, but the visual proof of their greed. It was undeniable. Slide 1, a photo of Kenneth and Cynthia in a private cabana in Bali, dated 3 months ago. They were holding tropical drinks, laughing. The caption from Kenneth's private cloud account read, "Living the dream on the company dime." #bonuslife. Slide 2, a split screen. On the left, a scanned copy of the withdrawal slip from the Children's Trust Fund, specifically earmarked medical emergency. On the right, a credit card bill for a diamond necklace from Cartier purchased on the exact same day for the exact same amount. Slide 3, an email from Cynthia to a rival PR firm, badmouthing Green Antiques. "My grandmother is losing her touch. The company is bleeding. If you hire Kenneth, we can bring over the client list." The gasps in the room were genuine this time. My cousin Sarah, the one who had been sympathetic to Cynthia earlier, walked over to me. She looked ashamed, wringing her hands. "Val," she said, her voice quiet. I didn't know. Cindy told me you cut Ken off from his own money. She said you were starving him out. She said you were obsessed with revenge." "He told everyone that," I said, sipping a glass of water. "It's called projection. He accuses me of doing exactly what he is doing to me." "I'm so sorry," Sarah said, tearing up. "I shouldn't have listened. You've always been the good one. I should have known." One by one, the family members came up to me. Aunts who had ignored me for months. Cousins who had liked Cynthia's photos. They apologized. They didn't apologize because they were noble, they apologized because I was now the heir. I knew that. I wasn't naive. But it didn't matter. The power dynamic had shifted. I wasn't the victim anymore, I was the matriarch in waiting. I drove home that night with Toby and Jenny asleep in the back seat. The snow was falling gently, covering the world in a clean, white blanket. I looked in the rearview mirror at my sleeping children. Their future was safe again. The trust fund would be replenished. The house was safe. But I knew Kenneth. I knew that cornered animals bite. He wouldn't just walk away. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. I kept the kids home from their winter break activities, sensing that Kenneth might try something. Then, school started back up in January. On the first Tuesday back, I was at the Green Antiques office, helping Uncle Ray sort through the aftermath of the Antique World leak, trying to salvage our client relationships. My phone rang. It was the school principal. Mrs. Miller? Her voice was tight. You need to come to the school immediately. Mr. Miller is here. He's trying to check Toby and Jenny out of school early. My heart stopped. He can't. It's not his custodial day. I told him that, the principal said. He's making a scene. He says he has a court order pending and that he has the right to take them for a trip. Don't let him take them, I shouted, grabbing my keys. I'm on my way. Call the police if you have to. I drove like a maniac. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. This was it. He was trying to take them. He was trying to run. When I pulled up to the elementary school, I saw Kenneth's BMW, the one he hadn't lost yet, parked crookedly in the fire lane. He was standing outside the main office doors, arguing with the school security guard. He looked unhinged. His hair was messy, his coat unbuttoned. He wasn't the slick businessman anymore, he was a desperate man. They are my children. Kenneth was yelling, pointing a finger at the guard. You can't keep them from me. I'm their father. I jumped out of the car. Kenneth. He spun around. When he saw me, his eyes narrowed into slits. You, he growled. You turned them against me. I tried to call Toby on the phone I gave him, and he didn't answer. I took the phone away, I said, walking up to him, placing myself between him and the school doors. Because you were using it to manipulate him. You are not taking them, Kenneth. I have a right, he screamed. Parents in the pickup line were staring. Teachers were watching from the windows. I'm taking them to Aspen. We're going on a trip. With what money? I asked loudly. The money you stole is frozen. The credit cards are declined. Where are you going to take them? To a motel? Shut up, he lunged toward me, grabbing my arm. Hey, the security guard stepped in, pulling Kenneth back. Sir, back off. Or I will arrest you for assault. Kenneth panted, looking from the guard to me. He realized he had lost the crowd. He realized he looked like a monster. You think you won, Kenneth hissed at me, straightening his jacket. But you haven't seen my lawyer yet. I filed the motion this morning. Emergency custody. I'm claiming you're unstable. I'm claiming you're alienating me. And I'm going to win. Go ahead and file, I said, my voice shaking with adrenaline but firm. But you better check your email, Kenneth. Mr. Sterling sent you a settlement offer. It expires in 24 hours. I don't want your settlement, he spat. I want everything. He got in his car and peeled out of the parking lot, tires screeching. I rushed inside. Toby and Jenny were sitting in the principal's office, looking terrified. Mom! Jenny cried, running to me. Daddy was yelling. We heard him yelling. It's okay, I said, hugging them both until my arms hurt. He's just having a bad day. You're safe. But I knew we weren't safe. Not yet. Kenneth was escalating. He was dangerous. I needed to end this. I called Mr. Sterling from the car. He tried to take them, I said. I know, Sterling said. He filed the motion. He's claiming you're hysterical and financially abusive. We have a hearing scheduled, but… Valery, court is a gamble. Even with the theft, judges sometimes hesitate to strip custody completely without a criminal conviction. Then we get a conviction, I said. Or we get a confession. He wants a meeting, Sterling said. Tomorrow. Riverside Cafe. He thinks he has leverage because of the scene at the school. He thinks he scared you. He did scare me, I said, looking at my children in the rearview mirror. And that was his mistake. Because a scared mother is the most dangerous creature on earth. The Riverside Cafe was a neutral ground, bustling with the post-holiday crowd, the smell of roasted coffee beans and cinnamon hanging in the air. It was a place for first dates and business meetings, not for the dismemberment of a marriage. Kenneth was sitting in a booth in the back, wearing sunglasses indoors. He looked terrible. His skin was sallow, his designer suit looked rumpled as if he had slept in it, and he was jittery. His foot was tapping incessantly against the floor. The withdrawal from his opulent lifestyle was hitting him hard. I sat down opposite him. I didn't order anything. I placed my purse on the table, keeping it close. You look tired, Ken, I said, keeping my voice low. Cut the crap, Val, he snapped, taking off the sunglasses. His eyes were bloodshot. Unfreeze the accounts. Today. Or what? Or I take the kids, he said, leaning forward. I have a lawyer, a shark who works on contingency. We'll paint you as a vindictive, unstable woman who turned her rich family against the poor, loving father. Juries hate rich women who keep dads away from their kids. I'll tell them you brainwashed Toby. I'll tell them you threatened Cynthia. You don't want the kids, Kenneth, I said calmly. You don't even know their teachers' names. You don't know Jenny's shoe size. You don't know that Toby is allergic to penicillin. You just want the money. You want the leverage. I have a right to my lifestyle, he hissed, looking around to make sure no one was listening. I earned that money. I managed that trust. I grew it. You and your grandma, you just sat on it. You drained it, I corrected. To $248.50. Do you know what that buys, Ken? It buys about 3 textbooks. That's it. You stole their future to buy Cynthia a bracelet she probably pawned yesterday. I was going to put it back, he said, desperate, his voice cracking. Once the crypto spiked, I was going to put it back with interest. You ruined it. You froze it right before the market turned. It's your fault the money is gone. It's always someone else's fault, isn't it? I reached into my purse. Kenneth flinched, maybe thinking I had a weapon. In a way, I did. I pulled out a small black device. A digital recorder. The red light was already blinking. What is that? He asked, his eyes widening. I'm recording this, I said. In our state, only one party needs to consent to a recording. I consent. You can't use that, he said, but he looked nervous. He looked at the device like it was a bomb. I just did, I said. I have you on tape admitting you took the money and that you intended to put it back, which proves you knew it wasn't yours to take. That's confession to embezzlement. That's intent. I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. But here is the real deal, Kenneth. I spoke to Mr. Sterling this morning. We are prepared to offer you a choice. A settlement? He asked, hope flaring in his eyes. He thought he was getting a payout. He thought he had one. An ultimatum, I said. Option A, you drop the custody suit immediately. You sign full legal and physical custody over to me. You sign a confession of judgment for the stolen $248,000, agreeing to a payment plan of 20% of your future earnings until it is paid back. In exchange, we do not file criminal charges with the FBI for wire fraud. We keep it civil. You stay out of jail. And option B? He asked, swallowing hard. Option B, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. We hand this recording, along with the bank transfers to Nevada, to the district attorney. You go to prison for minimum 5 years. You lose your financial license permanently. You become a felon. And you never see your children again because no judge gives custody to a father in a federal penitentiary. Kenneth stared at me. He looked at the recorder. He looked at the bustling cafe, realizing his world had shrunk down to this tiny, plastic booth. He realized that the shark lawyer he bragged about probably didn't exist, or wouldn't work for free once he knew the accounts were frozen. What about the alimony? He asked weakly. I have expenses. Cynthia, she's demanding things. Cynthia is not my problem, I said. You get no alimony. You committed financial infidelity. The prenup holds. You leave with your clothes, your car, assuming you can make the payments, and your freedom. That is the only gift you are getting. He sat there for a long time. I watched the wheels turn in his head. He was calculating. He was looking for a loophole. But there were none. Where do I sign? He whispered. I slid the papers across the table. Right here. And here. He signed. His hand shook, the pen scratching loudly against the paper. He signed away his rights to terrorize me. He signed away his claim to the money. He signed his surrender. One more thing, I said, taking the papers back and checking the signatures. Tell Cynthia that if she ever contacts my children again, I will file a restraining order so fast her head will spin. She is not an aunt. She is a stranger. Kenneth didn't look up. He was staring at the table. She won't. She's not happy with me right now anyway. She says I tricked her. Imagine that, I said, standing up. Trouble in paradise when the credit card gets declined. I walked out of the cafe. The winter air hit my face, and I felt like I could fly. It was over. The legal battle, the fear, the sleepless nights. I had won. But for Kenneth and Cynthia, the nightmare was just beginning. They were about to find out that rock bottom has a basement. When money walks out the door, love often flies out the window, especially when that love was built on a foundation of greed. In the weeks following the settlement, I didn't have to do anything to punish them. Karma took over. First, Kenneth lost his job. Word of the misunderstanding with the trust fund spread through the local financial community. Uncle Ray made sure of that. He didn't slander Kenneth, he just told the truth to a few keyboard members at the country club. In the finance world, reputation is everything. No firm wanted to hire a man who had been accused, even quietly, of dipping into client funds. He was blacklisted. Without his high salary, the lease on the sports car was repossessed. I saw it happen. I was driving past his apartment complex on my way to the grocery store, and I saw the tow truck hooking up his beloved BMW. Kenneth was standing in the parking lot in his pajamas at 2 p.m., yelling at the driver, waving his arms. It was a pathetic sight. And Cynthia? Well, Cynthia learned the hard lesson that being the other woman is only glamorous when the man is rich. They were forced to move out of her trendy downtown apartment because they couldn't afford the rent. They moved into a dingy, one-bedroom walk-up on the bad side of town. It was the kind of place with peeling paint and flickering streetlights. The walls were thin. I know this because my cousin, the one who lived in the building next door, gave me regular updates. They scream at each other all night, my cousin told me over the phone, sounding equal parts horrified and gleeful. I heard Cynthia yelling that he tricked her. She screamed, "You told me you were rich." You told me we were going to travel. You promised me Paris. And Kenneth yelled back, you spent it all. You bloodsucker. You drained me dry. You're the reason I'm in this mess. It was the classic collapse of a narcissistic relationship. Without a common enemy, me, or a common goal, money, they turned on each other. They were two scorpions in a bottle. Then came the incident. It was late February. I was grading papers at home, my new home, by the way. After the settlement, I decided to move into the lake house full-time. Grandma insisted. She said the house needed life, and the kids loved it there. My phone rang at 11 p.m. It was the police station. Mrs. Miller? The officer asked. Ms. Vance, I corrected automatically, using my maiden name. What is it? We have your sister, Amanda Cynthia Vance, in custody. For what? I asked, stunned. Drunk driving? Domestic disturbance, the officer said. Neighbors called 911. Apparently, there was an altercation between her and Mr. Miller. She threw a toaster at him. I shouldn't have laughed. Violence isn't funny. But the image of my fashion-obsessed sister, who used to cry if she broke a nail, throwing a kitchen appliance in a squalid apartment was so absurd it bordered on tragic comedy. Is he hurt? I asked. Minor cuts. He's not pressing charges, but we have to hold her until she cools down. She called you. She doesn't have anyone else. Her parents, your parents aren't answering. Our parents had been devastated by the whole affair. They had tried to stay neutral, but after the Christmas revelation, even they couldn't condone what Cynthia had done. They had gone on a long cruise to escape the shame. I'll come, I said with a sigh. Not because I wanted to save her, but because I needed to see it. I needed to see the end of the road they had chosen. I drove to the station. Cynthia was sitting on a metal bench in the holding area. She looked wrecked. Her roots were showing, dark brown contrasting with the expensive blonde highlights she couldn't afford to maintain. Her clothes were wrinkled. She looked 10 years older. When she saw me, she didn't glare. She didn't shout. She just slumped. He found someone else, she whispered when I sat down, keeping a safe distance. Kenneth? He's messaging women on dating apps, she said, her voice hollow. He tells them he's a victim of a bitter ex-wife who stole his fortune. He's looking for the next meal ticket. He told me I'm high maintenance and that I'm dragging him down. He told me I was just fun for a while. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. I gave up everything for him, Val. I lost my family. I lost my job because of the rumors. I have nothing. And now he's cheating on me. You didn't give it up, Cindy, I said gently but firmly. You threw it away. You gambled it on a lie. I know, she sobbed. I know. Can you bail me out? I don't have the $500. Kenneth won't pay it. I looked at my sister. The girl I used to share a room with. The girl who had stabbed me in the back. I reached into my purse. I pulled out my checkbook. I will pay the bail, I said. But you are not coming to my house. You are not coming near my kids. You are going to a motel, and you are going to figure out your life. If you go back to him, that's on you. I won't, she said. I hate him. I hate him so much. Good, I said, handing the check to the officer. Hate is a good place to start. It's better than delusion. I walked away. I didn't hug her. I didn't offer her a ride. I had paid the bail, that was charity. Anything more would be foolishness. With the toxicity removed from my personal life, I turned my attention to the mess Cynthia had left in my professional one. I resigned from my teaching position at the end of the school year. It was bittersweet. I loved my students, but I had a new mission. Grandma Josephine officially appointed me as the Director of Operations for Green Antiques. My first task? Cleaning up the antique world leak. Cynthia hadn't just sent a few emails, she had practically handed over our entire strategy for the upcoming spring auction. She had given them the reserve prices on our biggest items. I walked into the office on my first day, not as the shy granddaughter, but as the boss. Uncle Ray was there, but he stepped back, letting me take the lead. "We need to find the mole," I told Ray. Cynthia couldn't have accessed the secure server alone. She didn't know the passwords. Ray looked uncomfortable. "I have my suspicions. It's Sarah. My cousin Sarah. The one who had apologized at the party." I called Sarah into my office. She looked terrified. "Did you give Cynthia the passwords?" I asked. I didn't yell. I just waited. Sarah burst into tears. She said she just wanted to help Ken. She said Ken was going to save the company and he needed the data to make a proposal. I didn't know she was selling it to Antique World. I looked at Sarah. She was weak, easily manipulated, just like I had been. "I'm not going to fire you, Sarah," I said. "Because you're family. But you are on probation. And you are going to help me fix this. You are going to feed Antique World false information." "What?" Sarah wiped her eyes. "We're going to use the channel you opened," I said, a plan forming in my mind. "Tell Cynthia, if she asks, that we have a secret stash of Ming vases coming in. Tell her they are priceless. Let her tell Antique World." "But we don't have Ming vases," Sarah said. "Exactly," I smiled. "Antique World will spend their budget preparing for an auction that doesn't exist. Meanwhile, we will secure the estate sale of the Harrison property, the one Kenneth wanted to buy." It worked perfectly. Antique World wasted weeks chasing a ghost, while I swooped in and signed the contract for the Harrison estate contents. It was my first big win. It proved to the board, and to myself, that I wasn't just a teacher. I was a strategist. Meanwhile, life at the lake house was healing. I used the dividends from the company, money that was rightfully mine, to renovate the lake house. But I didn't make it flashy like Kenneth wanted. I didn't tear down walls or put in marble floors that were too slippery for socks. I made it a home. I expanded the kitchen so we could bake cookies together. I built a studio in the back for Jenny to paint. And I hired a local artist to teach me pottery. I finally took that kintsugi class I had wanted to take before my life fell apart. One afternoon, sitting at the wheel, feeling the wet clay between my fingers, I realized something. The clay has to be centered before you can shape it. If it's off-center, it wobbles. It collapses. For 10 years, my life had been off-center because I was revolving around Kenneth. Now, I was the center. Toby ran into the studio. He was 10 now, taller, happier. The shadow of his father's manipulation had faded. "Mom! Look!" He held up a report card. "Straight A's. That's amazing, T." I hugged him, getting clay on his shirt. He didn't mind. "And Jenny won the art contest," he added. Jenny walked in shyly holding a blue ribbon. "I painted the lake, Mom. And I painted us. You, me, and Toby." "And Grandma?" I asked. "And Grandma," she nodded. "And Uncle Ray." "Where's Dad in the picture?" I asked gently. Jenny looked at her shoes. "I didn't have room," she said. I looked at them. They were thriving. They weren't asking for iPads or designer clothes. They were catching frogs down by the water. They were reading books. They were safe. We were sitting on the deck one evening, watching the sunset painted across the water in strokes of orange and purple. Grandma Josephine was with us, wrapped in a shawl, sipping her tea. "You've done well, Valerie," she said softly. "I had good help," I said, squeezing her hand. "No," she shook her head. "I gave you the sword, but you swung it. You saved this family." "I just wanted the truth," I said. "And you got it," she replied. "You know, Kenneth called me yesterday." I stiffened. "He did?" "He wanted to reconnect. Said he missed us. Asked if there was any chance of a small loan to help him start a new venture. Something about NFTs. I laughed. I couldn't help it. "What did you say?" "I told him that the Bank of Josephine is closed permanently," she smirked. "And I told him that if he calls again, I'll forward the call to Mr. Sterling." He hung up very quickly. We laughed together. The fear was gone. He was just a ghost now. A cautionary tale. Spring turned into summer. The lake house was full of life. We had barbecues on the weekends. Uncle Ray taught Toby how to fish. Jenny covered the fridge in drawings. But there was one loose thread. Cynthia. She had been quiet for months. No social media posts. No calls. I knew she was working as a receptionist at a dental office, a humble job for someone who used to brag about VIP events. She was living in a small studio apartment, taking the bus because she had sold her car to pay off her credit card debts. One day, a package arrived at the door. No return address. Inside was a small box. I opened it. It was the forgiveness bracelet she had tried to give me at the Christmas party. The cheap metal one that I had mocked. There was a note. "Val, I know I can't give this to you. I don't deserve to ask for forgiveness. But I found this in my stuff when I was moving, and I couldn't look at it. It made me sick. I was so cruel. I was so jealous of you. I wanted what you had because I didn't think I could get it on my own. I thought if I took Kenneth, I would take your life. I was wrong. You made the life, not him. I'm sorry. Cindy." I held the bracelet. It was trash, really. But the note felt real. It lacked the defensive tone she usually had. I didn't call her immediately. Trust is a fragile thing. But a week later, I was driving past the dental office where she worked. I saw her walking to the bus stop. It was raining. She didn't have an umbrella. She was wearing sensible shoes, not her usual heels. I pulled over. I rolled down the window. "Get in." Cynthia looked up, startled. She looked like a drowned rat. "Val? Get in before you ruin the upholstery," I said. She got in. She smelled like rain and cheap peppermint. "I got your note," I said, driving. "I meant it," she said quietly. "I really am sorry. About the kids. About the money. About everything." "Where is Kenneth?" I asked. "Chicago," she said. "He moved back in with his mom. He sends me nasty texts sometimes, blaming me for his life. I blocked him." "Good," I said. "Why did you pick me up?" she asked. "Because you're my sister," I said. "And because it's raining. Don't read too much into it." Can I see the kids?" she asked, her voice trembling. "No," I said instantly. "Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. You hurt them, Cindy. You screamed at them. You made them feel unsafe. You have to earn that back." "How?" "By being consistent," I said. "By keeping a job. By staying away from guys like Kenneth. By being a person. I dropped her off at her apartment. It was a small, brick building. Not fancy, but clean. "Thanks for the ride," she said. "Cindy?" I called out before she closed the door. "Yeah?" I liked the note. It was honest. She smiled, a small, sad smile. "It's all I have left." It wasn't a full reconciliation. It wasn't a movie ending where we hugged and cried. But it was a start. It was the first layer of gold lacquer on the broken bowl. October brought a surprise that I never saw coming. Grandma Josephine fell ill. It wasn't life-threatening, just a bad bout of pneumonia, but it scared us enough to gather around her bedside. I was sitting with her late one night, holding her hand. The house was quiet. "Valerie," she whispered. "I have a confession." "What is it, Grandma?" I asked, smoothing her hair. "Kenneth," she said. "The job offer in Chicago. The one he was bragging about before the crash. The one he thought he was going to get." "Yeah?" "He didn't find that on his own," she chuckled, causing her to cough. "I set it up." I stared at her. "What?" "I knew about the affair before you did," she admitted. "I saw the way they looked at each other at the Easter brunch. I saw the text messages on his phone when he left it on the table. I didn't want to believe it." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I needed to know if he would leave you," she said. "I needed to know if he was just a cheater, or if he was a danger to the legacy. So, I had an old friend of mine, a headhunter, reach out to him. Offered him a dream job in Chicago. High salary, big bonus. But there was a catch. The job required him to be single. Or at least, to move alone. And? He took the bait, Grandma said. He told the headhunter he was in the process of divorcing. He told them he had no attachments. He was ready to leave you and Cynthia for the money." My jaw dropped. He was going to dump Cynthia too? "In a heartbeat," Grandma said. "That's why I knew I had to destroy him. He wasn't in love, Valerie. He was just hungry. He would have eaten this family alive. So the job was never real," Grandma smiled wicked. "It evaporated the day I changed the will. He lost the girl, the wife, the money, and the fake job." I laughed. I laughed until tears ran down my face. My grandmother, the 80-year-old antique dealer, was the greatest savage I had ever known. "You are terrifying," I told her. "I am a green," she corrected. "We protect our own." It's been exactly 1 year since that fateful Christmas Eve. Tonight, the green estate is lit up again. But the guest list is different. There are no sycophants. No business partners trying to scam us. It's just family. Real family. I'm wearing the red dress again. It's become my signature. I stand by the fireplace, the same spot where Grandma read the will. Grandma is sitting in her chair, fully recovered, looking regal in blue velvet. Uncle Ray is laughing with Sarah. Toby and Jenny are handing out gifts. Real gifts. Thoughtful things. A drawing for Grandma. A scarf for Uncle Ray. There is a knock at the door. I freeze for a second. Is it Kenneth? Is he trying to crash the party again? I walk to the door and open it. It's Cynthia. She's wearing a simple coat. She looks nervous. She's holding a Tupperware container. I brought cookies," she stammers. "Mom said I could come. Just for an hour. If it's okay with you. I promise I won't stay long." I look at her. She's not the glitzy, arrogant girl from last year. She looks humbled. She looks like my sister. Come in, I say, stepping aside. But if you start talking about crypto, I'm kicking you out. She cracks a small smile. Deal. She walks in. It's awkward at first. But then Jenny runs up to her. Aunt Cindy. Children are so forgiving. It breaks my heart and heals it at the same time. Cynthia hugs her, and I see tears in her eyes. She knows she almost lost this. She knows she is on probation. She sits in the corner, grateful just to be in the room. Later that night, after everyone has left, I stand on the balcony overlooking the frozen lake. The air is crisp and clean. I think about the journey. The pain of the betrayal. The terror of the financial ruin. The shame of the gossip. It was the hardest year of my life. But it was also the best. I lost a husband who didn't love me. I lost a fake life that was suffocating me. But look at what I gained. I gained my self-respect. I gained a career I love. I gained a deeper connection with my children. I gained the respect of my grandmother. I look down at my hand. I'm not wearing a wedding ring anymore. My finger feels light. I take a sip of champagne, my own champagne, bought with my own money. Grandma joins me on the balcony. You know, she says, looking at the stars. I didn't change the will just to punish them, Val. I know, I say. I changed it because I saw who you were, she says. You were always the one, Valery. You just needed to see it yourself. You needed to be pushed into the fire to realize you were made of gold. I smile. Kintsugi, I whisper. What? Nothing, I say. Just, thank you. Merry Christmas, my dear, she says. Merry Christmas, Grandma. The story of how my husband left me for my sister ends here. But my story? My real story? It's just beginning. And let this be a lesson to anyone listening who feels like they are being buried. Maybe you're not being buried. Maybe you're being planted. Stand up. Fight back. And never, ever let them steal your future. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I hope it helps someone out there who is facing their own battle. You are stronger than you think. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more about how I rebuilt my life, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. And remember to comment one if you made it to the end. You guys are the best. See you in the next video. Valery's journey reminds us that sometimes life's most painful betrayals become our greatest catalysts for transformation. In her story, we witness not just the collapse of a marriage, but the remarkable rebirth of a woman who discovered her own strength when pushed to the edge. What makes this narrative so powerful isn't the satisfying justice served on Christmas Day, but the profound inner journey from victim to victor. The true wealth in life isn't measured by bank accounts or social status, but by our capacity to stand firmly in our truth when everything crumbles. Valery's evolution teaches us that resilience isn't about avoiding pain, but about finding purpose within it. Her grandmother's wisdom, "You're not being buried, you're being planted," serves as a universal reminder that our darkest moments often contain the seeds of our greatest growth. The betrayal that was meant to destroy her instead revealed her true character and capabilities. As we reflect on this story, consider where in your own life you might be facing challenges that feel overwhelming. Remember that you too possess untapped reservoirs of strength waiting to be discovered. Has there been a moment when adversity revealed something powerful within you that you never knew existed? Share your thoughts in the comments, or simply write good if this message resonated with your own journey through life's inevitable storms.